So pecking order. Pecking order is horrible. It's horrible to witness. It's difficult to make a decision about when you integrate new chickens, and I'm struggling with it at the moment. I Last night the black Brahma really went for the Marin, and then the cockerel started to join in, and at that point Mark and I intervened. Um, I was going to leave the Marin out because we couldn't catch her. I was going to leave her out in the coop with, sort of free ranging in the coop. Um, but stood there, for like a minute and realised that we wouldn't be able to do that. And Mark managed to catch her, and we put her in the cage with the other two. So this said to him that I would try and not free range them, but integrate them in the three areas, in the coop, and in the coop, the run that they've had access to, and the bigger run. So have all of that open, and for the Brahmas to stay in as well today, so they all had plenty of space, which is what you're meant to do. So there's plenty of space for everybody to run away. So I started to do that, but I just couldn't. I couldn't stand and watch. I sort of moved around and moved towards the Brahma to move her off, and sort of supervised for a bit, but I just couldn't bear to walk away and leave them and hope that they would be all right. I think the problem at the moment is that Mr. Brahma, Mr. Cock, is not well, and he is aggressive at the moment, not to us, but he's bad tempered at the moment, I think, because he's not well, because you know how docile he is. But to see him seeing her attack and going into attack as well is horrible. It's horrible. Um, and the reality is that those sort of that pecking order thing that goes on is a necessary part of chickens working out who's boss. I just think that it's not very well balanced at the moment because the new hens are of a smaller breed anyway. Our Brahmas are a large breed, heavy bird, and we've bought in hens that are not heavy birds, and they're young. So the size difference is wrong. So the balance is right. I shouldn't use this, but it's a bit like the Israel Gaza thing. It's not balanced. The impact and power of one side is just too much for the other side. So the Brahmas are out and the other hens are in, but they've got access to all three areas at the moment, and I think I'm just going to do it for longer. I just have to do it for longer. Either I've got too soft. I do think it's not balanced, and I don't want them to get hurt. I don't, I think that chickens, cockerels, when they fight, will fight to the kill. I worry that they will keep pecking, stand on her, keep pecking her, and kill her. And I'm not ready to, stand by or ignore that. So for now, that's how I'm going to do it. And I think I'll just really, really slow down the integration. It's not much of a bother. Well, apart from trying to catch them at night to put them in the cage. In fact, two of them, I lifted the cages down. I lifted the cage last night up slightly, and two of them walked in because there's food in there. So two of them walked in, but the Baron didn't. I'll try that again tonight. So at least we've only got the Marin to catch. Um, Mark's been mowing, so it looks really nice out. He trimmed yesterday, mowed today, so it's looking a bit tidy out here. I've put washing on the line, using our new line for the first time, which is nice. Bedding, that's nearly dry, and it's been, we've got black clouds, dark clouds now. It's been overcast, but it's a bit of a breeze, and yeah, so that's nearly dry. It's nice, and I haven't for years been the person hanging the washing because I couldn't for a long time lift my arms to do that. It's quite nice to be able to do that now, and it's just it's just by the compost bins. It's not very far down the garden, and it's more or less flat. I've just realised because we've got in places there's ground rock that comes up and protrudes, and I noticed that I have to watch where I am because there's a rock there. Um, Ludo did say some time back that he would see if he could reduce them. So I might ask him to do that because that's a bit dodgy. So I'm walking along, hanging stuff on the line, and behind me there's this rock that I have to make sure I don't stand on or topple over or fall over from. But yeah, so that's nearly dry, and it's nice being able to just look out the back door and see the washing. Some people might think that's mad, but I don't care. I had my last therapy session yesterday with Jane, which was it was really nice because up to just sort of a few hours before, I was sort of reflecting and thinking about how this last session would be, and at the time that we'd known each other. Because even though I've not seen her or hadn't seen her for since 2002, when we moved to Devon, I obviously stopped having therapy in Kent and changed. So I've not seen her since 2002. So it's been a long gap. But the thing about a therapist is they know you. She knew me intimately, and I didn't know her intimately, because you shouldn't know your therapist as well as they know you. That's not really how it works. But so it felt like there hadn't been the gap when we got back into the relationship again a year ago. It didn't really feel very different, apart from we weren't in the same room together, and so it was really lovely. But as I was reflecting yesterday before I started my session, I realised that if it weren't for her, Mark and I wouldn't be together. I wouldn't be here, because it was down to not one of my last sessions with her, but I was in a group that we called the Marathon Group. That was a group of people that met twice a year for a weekend therapy workshop, whatever you want to call it. And I was in that. I mean, all of this was part of my training to be a psychotherapist. It was really helpful to be in groups and in individual therapy. So I was in this marathon group, and I had this particular weekend. I mean, had talked about how I was struggling with not being in a relationship. I'd been divorced since 93, and this would have been about 99. So I'd been on my own for 6 years. I'd had brief relationships, but not the sort of relationship I was looking for. And I talked about how I missed being held, and how I missed all of that stuff. And I talked about how hard I was finding it to be, because we worked together, Mark and I, and how hard I was finding it now to be around him, because I really wanted to be in a relationship with him, and being close to him and near him was becoming difficult. And they said to me, you need to let go of that now, and you need to move on, and this has been 2 or 3 years. You need to move on, and let go. So I came away from there thinking, oh, okay, I need to move on and let go. And then I went for therapy the following week, or I don't know how soon it was, during the following week. And Jane said to me, you owe it to your child to ask one more time. And that's what I did. I came home, and I sent him an email. I've still got the email upstairs. I sent him an email that I think changed the course of everything. And we were still where we were the following week, but a few weeks later we ended up getting together. But I said to her yesterday, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be with Mark. And I told her the story, and she hadn't heard. She said, I don't remember this. And I'm not sure. I may have told her. I mean, it might be because I tell the story now from the past, and sort of all the bits locked together. What she was getting was the me in the moment, where the pieces were still, we're trying to work out the pieces. So she probably didn't get the story in the way that I told it yesterday. I think she was quite moved to know that that she played a large responsibility in Mark and I being together. I said to him yesterday, and I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't have sent the email, if we hadn't have gone to the wedding. Would we have got together after the wedding anyway? Whether or not I'd written the email, I don't know. I think not, because he wouldn't have known how I was feeling. He had made assumptions that I was moving on. I'd reached a point of knowing that I needed to move on from the work that I was doing, or from where I was, and I'd applied for a job in Gloucester, and we were in Kent at the time, and I'd applied for a job in Gloucester. And he said to me, he said this was as close as Mark gets um, to saying, or to giving way to some of his feelings. He's like, "Oh, I hope you'll keep in touch," was what he said. I'm sure that's what he said. Um, yeah, I think that was a bit. I think me applying for a job in Gloucester and the potential for me to be leaving was probably a bit of a wake up call for him. But we'll never know. So yeah, it was really lovely to have my last session, because I really don't need to be in therapy. I had all of my therapy years ago. This was more about having putting something in place just before Mark had his knee done last year, because I didn't know what we were going to be facing, how I was going to cope with looking after him. Had fantasies obviously about having to do much more than I did actually do, and I wanted to find ways of supporting me whilst I was supporting him. It's really important that if you're supporting someone, if you're caring for someone, if you're a carer, that somewhere in amongst that you've got care for yourself. I mean, that's how it should work. It's a little bit like, when you have a baby, you're, as a mother, most of what you're doing should be for that baby, and there should be somebody behind you meeting your needs for you so that you can meet the needs of the baby. That would be the ideal situation. Obviously, there's not a lot of that. There is a lot of that, actually. I do see a lot of that now. A lot of fathers and husbands providing all of that. I think my son was Philip was very, very good, and still is good at being a parent. And I think that there's years ago, the fathers weren't included as much as they are now, and fatherhood, parenthood um, wasn't considered to be the way it is now, the hands-on way it is now. And I really love seeing the hands-on parenting that there is now. So it's really important that if you're using all of your energy to give to someone else, that you've got someone else backing you up. And I know that not everybody can afford to do that. Not everybody can afford to do what I did, but could afford it, and that's what I did. And to have, I've been seeing her now since um, he had his knee done in October, but we thought it was going to be July. So probably from September. So 10 months. Yeah, about 10 months. And it's been really interesting, because I have addressed some things that I've needed to address. I feel a lot better. Lots of things I've made changes about. I've changed my diet. That's made a big difference to how I feel. I've changed how I manage my life a bit, I suppose. And yeah, that's really nice. Very sad to say goodbye, but somehow I know deep down that I don't. It's not necessarily goodbye. If I needed to be in touch, if I really needed to, I know now that I could contact her again. But when I left her in 2002, there wasn't anything like Zoom, or I don't know, 2002. I'd only just begun to use a computer in the late 1990s, because I didn't have any money. I'd left my husband. I was training to be a nurse. I'd got no money to spend on computers and things like that. So, but I don't know when the technology would have arrived where I could have a video conversation with someone who's in another country. You know, it may have been around then, but it wasn't, certainly wasn't something that I contemplated. So yeah. Anyway, I'm hoping Mark will come out and put the umbrellas up. Now they can stay up for a couple of weeks. I think we got a couple of weeks on the forecast of decent weather, for the first time in forever. Um, and Ludo's coming on Wednesday or Thursday to do some strimming. There's a lot of strimming still to do. Mark's trimmed out here, but there's large areas out the back that needs trimming, and getting all that in place. And he's going to clear up around the washing line where he mixed cement and various other bits and pieces. So, but otherwise, we're just going to have a peaceful afternoon in the garden. Sun's coming out. I think I'm going to go and get my book and read. And that is that. Okay. I know. I was going to say about pecking order, and Mr. Cockerel is still really bunged up, but moving around, walking. He hasn't got a fever. He's not. There's no sign of any discharge from his nostrils. If he had avian flu, he would be dead by now. They die very quickly with avian flu. It's also virulent, and she'd have it by now. So there isn't. He hasn't got that, and I'm hopeful that now we've got the sun, and he's out in the sun, and that he's out in the garden more because she's up and about, that he'll throw it off. They've not eaten what I put down for them yesterday, but I'm hopeful he'll throw it off. I don't think it's an infection, and he's still not ill enough to go to the vets, sadly. So yeah, and I was on that note, I was really aware that I'm missing very much. When I was down there this morning thinking about the pecking order stuff and trying to work out what to do, I was thinking about how much I miss the people that taught me 20 years ago. And two of them are dead, and one of them I don't know where she is now. But I was on a poultry forum, and all that I've learned about chickens, I learned from Chris and Eric, who just knew all there was to know. And if you'd got a question, they answered it. If you hadn't got a question, they'd tell you it sometimes. And it was so good to have old heads, old hands to give you advice. And what's happened now is that I have become the old head and the old hand to give advice, but today I really need them.